This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. As most mothers would attest, the days in and days out of parenting can be exhausting, to say the least. No matter how much you love your kids, there are moments when you want to pull your hair out. To cope with the stress, some moms turn to cannabis. A growing number of parents online say smoking weed is actually helping them to parent better. They're more relaxed, more patient, less quick to yell. But parenting, while high, can come at a cost. Sarah Levy is the author of Drinking Games, a memoir. She recently wrote a piece for The Atlantic called A New Generations of Moms Who Get High. And Sarah joins us now. Hey, Sarah, nice to meet you.
Hi, so nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Listeners, are you a mom who smokes weed? How does it help you? Do you ever smoke during the day or after your kids go to bed? Or maybe you feel strongly that you should never be high around your kid. We want to hear from the moms out there. What's your relationship with weed and parenting? Give us a call at 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. So you looked at an online community that call themselves Garden Moms, and they say smoking weed can actually make them better at parenting. Who's in these videos? What kind of lifestyle are they promoting?
Yeah, so, a lot of these moms I found are primarily full-time stay-at-home moms. They have young kids in the home or, they're in school during the day. And I spoke to moms all over the country, everywhere from Colorado, Massachusetts, New York, California, Arizona. And the pattern that emerged was pretty similar, at least in this specific subculture of garden moms. A lot of them wake up in the morning before the rest of the house, so before the kids get up, and this is their me time. They go out to the garage with usually like a bong or a vase and take a few hits of cannabis before, starting the day with their kids. So that was a little different than some of the other moms I spoke to who were maybe having an edible after their kids go to bed at night to kind of unwind from the day. These moms were they really use cannabis as a way to prepare for the day, and they see it as a tool that helps them to be calmer, more present parents with their kids.
Yeah, how is it being framed as self-care?
I think for a lot of these moms, they're pretty isolated. They don't have a ton of additional support, whether that's childcare or, one of the moms I spoke to had her first child in the peak of COVID. So she was, very isolated. And this was a real and can be a real form of self-care for a lot of these moms. It's time to themselves. It's, a breath that they can take, just away from the demands of, a screaming toddler. And for some of the moms who are struggling with mental health, they are using cannabis to wean off of antidepressants. They really feel that it's helping with their baseline anxiety and depression. And I think it's just, something that's just for them in an era of intensive parenting where a lot of moms feel like they have a responsibility to give all of themselves to their kids. This is something that the moms view as, just theirs.
It's kind of interesting because substances have been helping parents become sort of calmer. Have been around forever. In the 50s, there were tranquilizers that were given women. In the 60s, there was Valium that was given to women. And lately, it's been sort of, the wine mom. You hear about that quite a bit. Is this really that different?
I think that the question throughout is the same, right? Which is why do what kind of pressure do we put on moms that we need? I'm a mom myself, that we need to pick up substances to kind of get through the day or get through parenting. I do think that cannabis is different in that, compared to the THC content in a lot of the products now can be up to 90% versus 4% in the 90s. So I think cannabis is stronger than it was, 30 years ago. And I think the fact that, a lot of these moms are using cannabis throughout the day poses a different set of risks in terms of, responsiveness and ability to, respond quickly to your child. And, if there's an emergency or they're in a dangerous situation. I think wine mom culture in particular has become very normalized. And, we would have a different reaction collectively to a mom getting on TikTok maybe and drinking wine at 5:30, 6:30 in the morning and, continuing throughout the day. So, in that sense, they're different. I think what the garden moms would say is they're using cannabis much more intentionally than they see, wine moms using alcohol. And they view it as a tool that's helping them to be better parents versus maybe alcohol, which is it's just seen as something that you do recreationally and unwind, relax with your friends or with your spouse at the end of the day. They really described cannabis as something that helps them to be better parents.
We're talking about a new generation of moms who say smoking weed helps them parent better. Sarah Levy wrote about it in The Atlantic. She's our guest. We'd like to hear, are you a mom who smokes weed? How does it help you? Do you smoke weed during the day or the night after your kids go to bed? Or maybe you feel strongly that you shouldn't be high around your kids. Give us a call at 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. Some of the experts you spoke to for your article said that sense of relief or calm that moms say they get from smoking might actually be a sign of addiction. And that their smoking is it's treating withdrawal symptoms. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so one of the experts who I spoke to described the idea that cannabis, you think that it's helping with anxiety, but there's actually a very strong placebo effect, and for things like anxiety, sleep. So if you think that you're experiencing relief from cannabis, you very well might feel like you are, but in fact, you're likely dependent on cannabis. And so if you're experiencing irritability or anxiety, that is because you haven't, you're withdrawing from cannabis itself. And so what feels like the substance helping with anxiety may actually be the substance treating the withdrawal symptoms that it created. And at least 1 in 10 regular cannabis users develops dependency, which is comparable to alcohol. And morning use in particular, like wake and baking, is flagged as a particularly concerning pattern among cannabis researchers and experts. So you're not really getting relief, you're rather maintaining a baseline that the drug itself lowered.
I'm curious, when you were reporting this story, were any of the moms nervous to share their smoking habits with you?
Some of them were hesitant about having their names published in the story. They didn't want it publicly shared. But a lot of the moms I spoke to who are posting about being garden moms on TikTok were actually really excited to share about it, and we're really excited to have the stigma broken around cannabis use.
Did any of the moms you spoke to seem nervous about becoming overly dependent on weed?
No, most of the moms were really just strong advocates of the positive changes that the drug has had, for them and in their lives, and felt like their lives were better because of it.
Another thing that experts brought up to you was the idea that kids are always watching us, that they model us. Did anyone you talked to, were they concerned about weed, about the kids watching their parents smoke?
You know, most of the parents I spoke to felt very confident in the systems that they had in place. So, having their kids be asleep or, not in the same room when they were smoking, keeping things locked and out of reach, keeping supplies, inaccessible to their kids. But the research does show that children who grow up in homes where, parents are using cannabis in particular are just more likely to take up drugs and alcohol themselves. There was a Harvard study of 25,000 parent-child pairs that found that, youth affected by parental substance use are more than twice as likely to develop a substance use disorder by young adulthood. So, I think that these moms are aware of the fact that they would like to keep the cannabis out of reach of their children, and don't want them picking up cannabis until hopefully they're older. But one of the moms I spoke to said that her mom is also a cannabis user and that she started using it as a teenager, in her, with her mom. And so I think a lot of it is dependent on the family and the circumstances in the home.
Let's take a couple of calls. Jay is calling in from New Jersey. Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for making the time to call all of it. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you. I was just walking past my radio and heard this topic come up. And yeah, I am about to turn 48. I live in New Jersey. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I have a medical cannabis card for New Jersey for years now. But I was a smoker before that. And it absolutely does help keep me, I say it at 100% helps me be a better parent. As far as withdrawal, like I have never in my life, I've heard of people saying they get withdrawal from cannabis, like, oh, I get grouchy, I get a headache, da, 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 da. I've never, ever had any of these things affect me at all. It helps, and I've taken, I have, I've had issues with depression and anxiety in my life, and I've taken prescriptions for that. And the cannabis is by far better than any prescription medication I've taken for anxiety. And I've had plenty of time not using it either to compare it with.
Yeah. So how did it make you a better parent?
Well, when I am frustrated with, a lot going on, it helps me be more present with my child, and forget about some of the other, whatever's going on, things that are hectic. And it's like, oh, my kid wants to play a game. I don't feel like it. It can help at times bring out that, childlike, desire to just play and be silly, when you're feeling, whereas like, if I took a Xanax or something, it would just knock me out. That's not what I want. I want to be able to be engaged and calm and, playful, but not to a, degree of being irresponsible and stupid. Like I always, the dose makes the poison, they say. So it's also a matter of knowing how much you're going to use. It's much easier to titrate your dose than it is with, prescription. I have medical background as well.
Jay, thank you so much for calling in. I wanted to get your response, Sarah, to our caller.
Yeah, I think a lot of the moms I spoke to said the same thing. And one of the experts I spoke to who studies stress in parents in particular made an interesting distinction, which is that, according to his research and to the research that he's seen, being chemically calm is not the same thing as being fully present with a child. And something he said is, parenting requires reading a child in real time and responding with sensitivity to what they need in a particular moment. And in his view, a substance can interfere with that fuller response, even when the parent seems unruffled. So I thought that was an interesting distinction. And, all the moms I spoke with genuinely believe they're more patient, more present with cannabis, and the experts didn't fully dismiss that feeling, but they did all say that feeling calm and being ready to act and respond, quickly and readily, both in the case of an emergency, a child running into the street, choking, right, something of that nature, and being ready to act to mirror frustration or an appropriate emotional response to a child are two different things.
Legalization has made cannabis way more mainstream than it once was. When you think about a trend like this, how much of it is about changing attitudes and how much of it is about the cannabis industry actively marketing itself to moms?
I think that's a really interesting distinction. Daily users represent over 40% of the cannabis market and account for about 80% of all sales. And the cannabis industry is a $30 billion industry. So I think that, they have a direct financial incentive to cultivate garden moms as a customer segment. And they're actively doing so through influencer partnerships and brand deals with a lot of the garden moms on TikTok. So I do think that that's just something to keep in mind when having this conversation.
And the bigger picture issue after reading your piece and having been a mom is that there isn't a lot of help for moms, right? At the end of the day, people are taking this because they feel stressed out.
Yes. And under-resourced, and the demands on moms in every generation have been high, and I think continue to get higher and higher. And one of the experts I spoke to, was saying that parents certainly feel like they're under more stress today and that they're looking for more coping methods, and this is certainly one. And part of my interest in the piece stemmed from being a mom and really empathizing with what I was seeing in a lot of the posts from these moms was a desire for a reprieve, a desire for support, time for yourself, and the sense that like parenting is incredibly demanding, and being a mother is incredibly demanding, and that often it feels like there just aren't enough resources available.
Is there anything in your piece that people have been missing?
I think the distinction for me in the garden mom subculture in particular is these are not moms who are occasionally using cannabis. Right? Like having an edible with friends, going to book club, going to dinner, and using cannabis recreationally the way someone might have a drink now and then. But these moms are using cannabis to parent and see it as an essential tool in the way that they're parenting, and using it first thing in the morning and throughout the day with their kids. And I think that this piece is not a anti moms using cannabis piece. It's and specifically reporting on a specific subculture of moms who are using cannabis to, in their minds, be better parents and more emotionally responsive parents.
You should read about it in The Atlantic. It was written by Sarah Levy. Sarah, thank you for sharing your reporting with us.
Thank you for having me.